All right, good afternoon, everybody. We are so glad that you've joined us today for this webinar on resume writing through the Office of Career Development. My name is Emily Lakemaker, and I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment and Student Life here at the Rollins School of Public Health. Just a few logistics here at the top before I turn it over to my colleagues that are with me today. First of all, we are recording this, and we will be posting it to our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and reference anything, you should be able to do that later within 3 to 5 business days is usually once we get it posted up. Our YouTube channel is just RSPH Admissions, so you can easily Google that and find that. And we'll also be emailing out the link to everyone that's registered for this as well. Additionally, we are scheduled for this for an hour. We'll be going through the presentation, and then any time after that we have available, we will be taking your questions. You can see there's a section up in the upper right-hand corner where you can ask your questions. You can type those in. I will read them aloud, and then we will answer them. So we'll try to get through as many as we can in the hour. If we can't get to your question, I'm sure contact information is going to be provided for you, so you can reach out directly to the staff of the Office of Career Development to make sure that all of your questions and concerns are addressed. And there'll also be plenty of events during orientation to meet with these guys as well. So one way or the other, we'll make sure that you get handled. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our career services staff and let them introduce themselves, and we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Rollins and the Office of Career Development, and I'm Roger Presswood, a career coach, and I have my colleague LaDawna Jones here with me.
Good morning, well, good afternoon, and welcome to Rollins. Glad you all decided to attend. I'm LaDawna Jones, and I am also a career coach and the data manager for the Office of Career Development.
So I congratulate all of you for being so proactive in your careers. The resume is definitely probably the #1 topic that we see students for in our sessions, and that's because there's a lot of detail to the resume, and it takes a good bit of work to create an excellent resume. So today we're going to go through some of the key elements. You will still have questions, we know that, but this is to give you a foundation and an excellent start on your resume. We'll give you some work that you can do during the summer before you get to Rollins.
There we go, try now. There we are.
Okay, so the purpose of a resume, essentially it is a marketing tool. It's a tool utilized to market yourself as a competitive candidate. When you get to Rollins and are applying to internships, those are competitive internships. They may be getting 20, 25, 30 plus resumes. So you need to market yourself as a competitive candidate. So that's the mindset that I want you to think about as far as the purpose of a resume. It is also to obtain an interview. Some students think that the resume is the key document that will get me that dream internship. It is critical to obtaining the interview, but the point is to get you into the interviewer's chair. It is not to get you the position initially. And then highlight your relevant, transferable, and related experiences, skills and abilities, accomplishments, and education and knowledge. I will say a little bit about accomplishments. If there's one thing that our students are probably lacking in the resume, it's accomplishments. So you do a good job of relaying your experiences, some of your transferable skills like teamwork, communication. But what I want you to do is go back through your resume and think about your accomplishments. When I used to interview candidates, I would go through bullet points and I would see the skill set that they would state teamwork. But I'd also ask them, tell me, what are you proud of that you accomplished as the membership chair for that Student Government Association? And sometimes they really had no answer. So think back through your accomplishments as well and add those to your bullet points. Let's look at the top 5 reasons that resumes fail. There are many reasons, but this is just to give you an idea of things I want you to look out for. No related keywords. So no keywords or descriptive wording in the resume that matches what the job description stated. So the first thing you're going to do is read through the job description, and where it says strong teamwork, strong quantitative skills, you want to take those keywords, go back in your resume, and insert those throughout your bullet points in the resume. The interviewers, the hiring managers, they want to see those related skills and keywords in your resume. Resume cliches, excellent communicator, highly motivated. It's fine to utilize these because they will be requested in the job description, but If you state those things in the bullet points without giving me the examples of where you develop those skills, it has no meaning to me. Anyone can say that they're an excellent communicator. How many friends do you have that think they have great communication skills? But you need to tell me, where did you develop those? So if you were a team lead and that's how you develop your excellent communication skills, give me that in the bullet point where you developed that at. It's probably another area that students miss a lot. They'll tell me the skill sets, but not really give me the details of where they developed it at. Lack of customization, using the exact same generic resume. If you apply to 20 positions, you should not be sending the exact same resume. It goes back to what we've been saying. Look through the job description, customize the resume for that position. So if they're looking for international experience and you have international experience but you realize you don't have that on the resume, add that. Because remember, if I'm getting 25 to 30 plus resumes and you send a generic one in, do you think I'm going to select you as a candidate? No, I'm looking for that candidate that listed the international experience on the resume that I was requesting. So it takes a little more time. I'm not saying that you're going to have dramatic changes at this point, but still just that effort that you go go back and put in some of the keywords for that position can make a huge difference in whether I select you as a candidate.
Roger, how would I customize my resume if I have limited experience and responsibilities?
So again, we don't expect you to come in here with all the skill sets that are being requested in some of the internships, but you do need to think back to your experiences and transferable skills. Think about the times where you've done quantitative work. It may not be in the health realm even, but think about that. Think of when you've had good leadership abilities, when you've demonstrated that, communication skills. As long as I can see that you have some good transferable skills that I can work with as the employer, I can still train you on other aspects. But often the mistake is that candidates don't even list, they don't think through their transferable skill sets, and that's going to be critical. Errors in spelling, you have to double check for errors. That is instant elimination in the resume as well as the cover letter. I can't tell you how many times I used to interview, I would see spelling errors. And my team of interviewers, if they saw any error, they would be instantly eliminated. So that's commonly known. So you're going to have your friends look at it, you're going to have career services look at it to double check for errors. Resume padding and lying, that's not really something that we have an issue with at Rollins, but something to be aware of. Organizations do background checks, and so they can see dates, they can see salaries, they can see titles. So do not grossly exaggerate any dates or titles or salaries. Moving on to, let's look at the sections of a resume. So there are some required sections: the contact information, education, experience, and the skill sets are all going to be required. Optional but strongly recommended by career development would be leadership, service, and volunteer. Fortunately, most of you have done excellent in this because you're coming to the field of service, so this is not an issue. Honors and awards, trainings and certifications, and professional memberships. And I'll break these categories down a little bit later in the presentation, but these are all great categories to add, sections to add to your resume. So let's start with looking at the contact information. This is your header. So you're going to begin with your full name, as you can see. The address, I have listed the Rollins address here. I know that some of you may not be comfortable listing your personal or home address, so it's appropriate to list the 1518 Clifton Road, and this is the accurate address, so you can utilize that. Phone number, use your one best phone number and have an appropriate message. Again, a huge issue when I used to call candidates would be the message I would get when I would call. It would be something like, hey, leave a message at the tone. That is not the professional image that you want me to hear the first time I hear your voice. So, hello, you've reached Roger Presswood. Thank you for your message. Please leave your name and number, and I will return your call as soon as possible. That is a good professional message. And try to call back the same day, no later than 24 hours. I would have candidates call me back 2 to 3 days later. So why would I want a candidate that doesn't even call me back for days? That does not express motivation. And then your email address. It's preferable to use your Emory EDU, especially in Atlanta. That's going to be a highly recognized email address, much better than a generic Yahoo or Gmail address. Education. So here's an example of what your education section will look like. You're going to see the names and locations of your graduate and undergraduate schools, the dates of graduation, expected graduation. So most of you coming in, your date of graduation will be expected May 2017. So it's critical to put expected May 2017. And degrees complete, sought, and concentration. So spell those out. Don't use acronyms for those. I will say one more thing about the education section. You can see that we actually use master and bachelor, M-A-S-T-E-R, and bachelor. In our language, we often say we have a bachelor's of science or a master's of public health. That's how we say it just in wording, but it is not the correct written form of that. So go back and make sure you have master and bachelor in your education section.
Can I include my information about scholarships that I received in this section?
Yes, this is a place that you can add scholarships and honors and awards, and I'll speak a little bit more about that as well in the presentation. All right, moving on to the experience section. So remember, you're going to utilize keywords and skill words from the job description. That's your first thing you're going to do is read that job description thoroughly, start picking out those transferable skills. List relevant experience positions as far back as 10 years. I know that most of you will not go back 10 years, but that is the standard 10 years. Now, some of you, though, may go back into high school. If you have a position that you developed excellent teamwork, leadership skills in high school, then it would be appropriate to list that. But I'm not saying that you should list every position you've had, but the relevant ones that would relate to the position you're applying to. Chronological. You will begin with your most recent and work your way backwards towards that 10 years in the experience section. And don't ignore your significant volunteer experiences. Some of you, if you were a team leader for Habitat for Humanity and you've done that for 2 years, that may be much more significant than the lab experience that you've had, especially if the job description is asking for strong teamwork leadership skills. So you would utilize that volunteer experience under your experience section. So at this point, I'm not that concerned of whether you were paid for the position. What I want to know is, what are the skill sets that you will bring to this internship and what impact will it have? So I really want you to go back and think through all of your volunteer experiences and those transferable skill sets that you've developed. Don't abbreviate or use acronyms. You'll find once you get to Rollins, you may have already seen that we have about 1,000 acronyms for departments. And that pales in comparison to the CDC. They have thousands and thousands of acronyms. So in the resume, the first time you're going to spell it out in parentheses, you'll put the acronym. Then the rest of the resume, you can use the parentheses and the acronym. But realize that the people are reading this, HR people, different people in divisions, they have no idea what these abbreviations are. I don't even know. I have to ask you as my colleagues what these abbreviations mean. So be very thorough in that. Continuing the experience section, in your bullet points, you're not going to use pronouns like I, he, she, or excessive words like a, the. Reason is bullet points are not complete sentences. We're not trying to write complete sentences. We're trying to write a very succinct description of your accomplishments and your skill sets. You want to be specific. Include numbers when possible, such as percentage increased or number of team members. Now, I realize a lot of you may not know the exact numbers, but when you can be quantitative, that makes a big impact. Interviewers, hiring managers love to see quantitative numbers. Why? Because most candidates don't include those. So if you did a fundraiser and you surpassed your fundraising goal by 10%, state surpassed fundraising goal by 10%. That gives me some solid information. I'm like, wow, I believe that as the interviewer. If you work with a team of 5, well, maybe I want you to work with a team of 6, 7 here. So that lets me know, okay, they're going to be comfortable with a larger team. So go back through your resumes and make sure that you can add quantitative information when possible. I do get the question that, well, Roger, I don't know if it was 10% or 11%. I'm not going to go back and check 10 years later to see whether it was 10 or 11. So give me an estimate. You can say 10% if you feel comfortable. Just don't grossly exaggerate the percentage, as I had said earlier. Stay away from verbiage like worked, duties included, responsible. I know that you worked. These words add no value to the resume. What I want you to do is start each sentence or bullet point with an action verb. Created, developed, managed, increased. managed team of 5, increased by 10%, created XYZ guide. These are the things that catch the interviewer's attention because it shows skill sets and accomplishments. Yes,
Does the Office of Career Development have resources available to help diversify the keywords used throughout my resume?
Yes, we do. At the end, I will give you the link for the guide where you can see an entire listing of action verbs to help diversify that throughout your resume. Let's get to the bullet points. That's probably the one question that I get the most. How do I write a good bullet point? What does a good bullet point even look like? We'll start with a poor example. I did the filing. Believe it or not, we do see this sometimes in students. I know it's because perhaps you knew you were coming to graduate school, you weren't looking for a full-time position, so you kind of went with what you had in undergrad. A better example would be, at least I hear the context, I can read the context, organize the office filing system. So at least I know that you did this filing in an office. Still though, not a lot of detail to work with here for me as the interviewer or hiring manager. The best example, organize and streamline office filing system by reducing duplicate files and documents of over 450 patient records for a 5-doctor medical practice. So imagine if you're applying to one of the larger clinics here at Emory, and we have hundreds of patients coming through the office with 15 doctors. Which candidate do you think I'm going to choose? If these are 3 separate candidates, there's no doubt I'm going to go with the last candidate because, good, they've worked with a large patient volume with a lot of doctors, so they've been in a fast-paced environment. The last example gives me the detail to state in my mind that this candidate can do the position. So again, I want you to go back through your resume and think about the detail that you left out. This is what you need to do. If you're going to have an excellent resume that stands out to interviewers and you're going to be competitive and market yourself well, as I've been saying, this is the key. You have to go back and give me the details of what you've done.
If I experience trouble with wording my bullet points, should I make an appointment with the career coach?
Definitely. This is something that we will help you with. We're not going to think it for you. I still want you to go through and write down the details as much as you can. But yes, we realize that sometimes it's hard to make this succinct and make it clear. So we definitely will help you with that. Let's move on to the leadership and volunteer experience section. So this is what that section might look like. I do want you to list your more relevant activities and the experiences that you've held. Now, I know the great thing is most of you are overachievers. That means you may have 25 leadership volunteer experiences listed on the resume, but no one wants to read your 25 experiences, and you do not have room in the resume to list those. So go back through, think through the ones that were more significant for you. And here's a good guide that I tell students. And this is what I actually used to do in interviews. I would see students list perhaps 10 volunteer experiences. I would ask the student, tell me, at the American Red Cross, you said you worked in public relations. What's something that you accomplished? Do you know that usually half the time the student would look at me and go, well, we actually only met twice. So my point here is, if I were to ask you that question in an interview, what are you proud of that you accomplished as a treasurer of the Emory Global Health Organization, and you don't have an answer for that, that may be the signal that you might want to continue to think about something to put down that you can tell me, here's what I accomplished, here's what I learned, here's how I worked with a team. Remember, you can include your leadership volunteer experience in your main experience section. So let's say that in the job description, they're asking for strong written skills. And in the public relations position at the American Red Cross, you wrote up some of the press releases or did some work on the website that you wrote up. That may be much more relevant to add to your actual experience section than the lab position that you held. So it is perfectly appropriate to take a position that you might have thought belonged under the volunteer section and put it under your actual experience section if it matches the transferable skill sets being requested in the job description. The key is, though, you're not going to list it twice. If you were to move the American Red Cross Public Health position to your main experience section, do not list it again in the volunteer experience. That's repetitive, and you don't have room for that. Additional sections of the resume, we definitely recommend the skills qualifications. Here you'll list skills such as your computer skills, language skills, and specialized training. I will say that these may be skills that are not necessarily requested in the actual job you're applying for. However, these are excellent transferable skill sets that most employers would want. Honors and awards. We had mentioned this earlier. Yes, you can list honors and awards in the education section. If you're going to have a more extensive listing, though, I want you to have a separate sections of honor and awards, and this would usually be towards the bottom of the resume. Again, I'm not interested in seeing 15 to 20 awards. No interviewer or HR manager is going to screen and read all of those. So go back and think, what are the ones that were more significant and the ones that I'm proud of that you're going to list? Certifications. I realize also that most of you are not going to have actual public health certifications. That's okay. But if there's certifications that you're proud of, perhaps you were a certified lifeguard, you've been a lifeguard for 3 years, that shows significant accomplishment, dedication, focus, CPR. Those are certifications that would be appropriate to list. And then as you get to Rollins and maybe you do some additional certifications, that is appropriate to list on the resume. Memberships and organizations, definitely list your student organizations. Again, as you get to Rollins, you're gonna look at public health associations. You'll be joining those, which you highly recommend, and that you get involved in those while you're at Rollins so you can be networking, and you're gonna add those under the membership and organizations heading as well. Formatting suggestions. Font size and type, 10 to 12. 10 is the minimum, 12 is the maximum. I usually think 12 looks too large, 10 too small. 11 is usually a very good midpoint for your font. And standard fonts are Times New Roman or Arial. There is no one exact font, but it needs to be one that is easily read. And Times New Roman and Arial are common ones that are read. The margins are recommended is 1 inch all the way around. If you're 1 or 2 lines going into a second page, yes, we can adjust those margins, try 0.75. So we'll work a little bit with the margins if we're trying to get it down to 1 page. Paper type, realize that for career fairs and interviews, you want to use resume quality paper. That is specifically resume paper that you will purchase. Very common at Office Depot, Office Max. So you'll have printed copies that you take to the career fair and to your interviews. Bullets versus paragraph. We strongly recommend bullets. I do still see students coming in with paragraphs. Interviewers do not want to read a paragraph in your resume. They want to scan the bullet points. So bullet points are what you are going to want to utilize. So if you are currently using paragraphs, convert those to bullet points. And using bold and italics, another big mistake I see is students come in and half of the resume is bolded or italicized. The point of using bold and italics is so that the information stands out. So if you're bolding all of the employee information, your title, the dates, what am I supposed to look at? So we recommend limiting that, and usually what would be bolded would be the employer name, italicize the title, key information. Yes?
If there's a certain word or section that I want to emphasize in my resume, would it be okay if I change the color?
Do not add rainbow colors to the resume. There may be certain fields, some creative fields, but you want to stick to a very traditional format and colors in your resume. Document uploads. Make sure your document does upload correctly. We recommend a PDF, and so when you attach that and upload that PDF, just open it up and make sure that it uploaded correctly. And this would also be true of when you're doing it online as well. If you're pasting it, make sure that it pastes it correctly. You don't have all those crazy squiggly lines. I used to also see that all the time. It looks very unprofessional when someone uploads a document and it does not have a professional look to it. So again, critical to that first impression. Let's move on to common issues and questions that we get. References. You do not need to list references. You'll see that some people still list them on the bottom of the resume or references available. You do not need to list that. You will list it on a separate piece of paper. You'll use the same header that you use for your resume. You'll use the quality resume paper, and you will take it to your interviews, because when I used to interview, if I liked a candidate, I would go ahead and ask there in front of the candidate, can you give me your reference page? If the candidate had the reference page on the resume paper, they looked very prepared and professional. Some did not have it, and they would say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll have to email that to you. So you want to be the candidate that's prepared.
What information should I provide on my references sheet?
And so you're going to provide the contact information, the email, phone number, organization, address, and something that's usually missing is what is the relation that you have to that person? Was it your supervisor? Was it your mentor? Add that piece of information, because many times I would look at references, I would have to call the reference and I would state, what is your relationship to the candidate? Because it wasn't clear on the reference page what the relationship was. Personal information in the U.S., you're not going to include information like marital status, race, or religious affiliations. All that is illegal information for the interviewer to know in the U.S. Hobbies and personal interests. It is okay to use a few hobbies and personal interests. If you're passionate about golf or dance, yes, you can add that, but I don't want to see 8 to 10 hobbies and interests. But it is true that, if you're passionate about golf, and perhaps I love golf as an interviewer as well, that can be a commonality and makes you more of a person, and connection and coming across as a strong candidate with someone who connects with the interviewer is definitely a good thing. But use smart judgment when you're using hobbies and personal interest. Emailing your resume, follow the instructions exactly. If it states email, resume, and cover letter separately, that's how you do it. Yes.
Do I need to draft a letter in the body of the email, or is providing the requested material sufficient?
You never want to send a blank email. And there's not one exact method, but what I think comes across as impressive is actually pasting your cover letter as the body of the email, because I will open that up and now you've got a nicely written cover letter that tells me more about your motivations, and hopefully I'll read that, as opposed to maybe taking a chance that I'll actually open up the document. You will still attach the cover letter document though, even if you paste the body of it as your email. And then online applications, again, follow those instructions exactly as it states online. It's the instant way to eliminate a candidate that doesn't follow the application instructions. If you don't follow the application's instructions, the chances that you'll follow the instructions once you get to the position are not likely as well. So those are instant ways to eliminate candidates. So be careful. So next steps. You're going to update, proofread, go back, look through your resume, make your resume stronger, make your bullet points more detailed. We are going to be available to see you. It will start immediately after orientation. It will be Monday, August 31st through Wednesday, September 2nd, where you can walk up to us, you can ask us any question, you can ask us to look at your resume. We'd be happy to do that. And the career fair will be September 3rd this year. I need you to be proud of the document you produce. I tell you this because you're going to get a lot of advice on resumes, and I will be the first person to say there is not one exact method for a resume. You'll get different advice from friends, professors. I've had parents who are HR managers. That's fine. I want you to take different opinions, but realize at the end of the day, you're the one that has to sit in front of the interviewer and answer their questions. So you need to be comfortable with the information that is in your bullet points. And when I ask you, what are you proud of that you accomplished? So this is your document. This is what you want to market about yourself. You own this document. Continue to improve and target your resume to your areas of interest. When you get to Rollins, you're here to explore. You're going to be doing many types of internships, different types of classes. So your resume is not stagnant. It's going to be a work in progress. I would say, continually update it. Don't wait until the end of the semester, at the end of the internship. Update it as these things are occurring so that you always have an up-to-date, accurate document. And it will change, per position. And usually the resume that students come in with the first year can be very different than the one that they're using the second year or when they're looking for jobs, because they focus themselves. And so we'll do more targeting on your resume as you continue here. And then finally, after the career fair, we'll be seeing you for full appointment sessions, and you can come in and we'll spend time with you to go through your entire resume and any other career development questions that you may have. Finally, you can see our website here. This is the Central Rollins website. Go to that, click on the Careers tab, and then click Polish Your Job Search Tools. Here you will see guides and manuals. You'll see a resume guide, has excellent examples of resumes, those action verbs that we talked about. So this will give you a lot of information and also answer more of the questions that you have. You'll also see cover letter guides, networking guides, so some really excellent resources that if you're really trying to get a head start on the career development side, this is what you look at before you get to Rollins. So now we will open it up to questions that you may have.
All right, guys, so let's get the question section open up, and I'm just going to read these aloud. We've got about half an hour before we have to get out of here. I know Roger has to get over to the CDC for another meeting, so we'll get through as many of these as we can, and then if we can't get to it in the time frame that we have allotted, then you can always email them to us, and we can do that. All right, so we can delete these. Okay, so we've got someone asking, is there any experience too trivial to include?
Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what this question is targeting, but no, if the experience is related to the job that you're applying for, then it wouldn't be too trivial to include. However, you want to think about those bullet points that you're including. So one of the things that I suggest to students a lot of times is go through the job description and actually highlight the areas that they're looking for someone to be qualified in, and then tying your experience to those things. And that's how you determine the bullet points that you'll draft for that resume you'll submit.
I'll add to that on the trivial side. Go back to that litmus test. If in the interview, if I ask you what skill sets did you develop and what did you accomplish, if you really don't have an answer for those two questions, it's trivial. You would not want to add that to the experience section.
All right, Rachel is asking, what is an appropriate length for a completed resume? Is over one page too much? How do I distinguish which information is most important to include?
We recommend trying to get this resume to one page initially. And a lot of that is because students are not utilizing good format, the font is too large, so try to get it down to one page. That is your initial goal.
All right, Sydney is asking, if I had a fairly short volunteer experience, should I not mention it on my resume?
It goes back to maybe it was only a month, but if you showed up 3 times a week in that month and you can say, you know what, this is where I really learned to work with a team. We had a communication issue that we resolved. Again, if you can give me a significant skill set and experience that you learned during that position, that is the key, because I used to interview candidates that would have something down for a year and a half and they had nothing significant to say about it. So it's not the length of time, it's what you have to say about your skill sets and what you accomplished.
All right, Rachel's asking, what would being a part of a Division I team as a member and captain be a good example of something to put in the leadership section?
Yes, because there are a lot of skills that you get from being the leader of a team, and also just from being a college athlete. So you should include that somewhere on your resume, whether it's leadership or experience, depending on what you are responsible for. Because I know some of the college athletes have done far more than others have done as the leaders, where they're actually basically in a role where they're working. So just depending on what you've done, include that somewhere on your resume.
And I will say I was a college athlete. My first position, the hiring manager said, I loved it that you had played competitive sports throughout college. So those are things, those are under the hobbies, interests, leadership that do separate you as a candidate.
All right, Elaine is asking, is it appropriate to include Concorsia certifications in my resume?
I am not Concorsia. I honestly am not certain exactly what that certification is. I'll go back to the certifications. As I had said earlier, I mean, a lifeguard certification may not be related, but if it shows dedication, if it shows determination of what it took to obtain that, that goes to show me who you are as a person and as a candidate. So I do actually like that question because it goes to show that certifications are really more about what it took to get that, what you learned from it.
All right, Elaine's also asking if she should include her GPA on her resume.
The GPA is something that is commonly included. In public health, I will tell you though that it is not something that most of our employers look for. The typical rule for GPA is if it was a 3.5 or above, it would be included on the resume.
All right. Michael says, is it appropriate to separate out employment experience and research experience? Or should he combine those?
If you were applying to a research experience and you had, let's say, 2 research experiences, but they were early on in your work experience, so maybe they're at the very bottom, or even if you're in the 2 pages, then yes, you would want to separate those out and start with research experience because that's what the position is. So it is appropriate to separate out different experience headings as you're targeting positions. And so as the interviewer, I don't want to see the research at the bottom of the resume if you're applying for research. So after education, you'll have a heading that says research experience. You'll list the 2 research positions. For all your other experience, you'll have a heading that says additional experience, and then you would list every other experience that you've had.
All right, Rebecca says, how many references should I list?
You should list 4. Typically people ask for 3, and so that 4th person just gives you someone extra on your references list in case someone's on vacation or leave, so that way they don't have to come back to you and waste time.
All right, another question about certifications here. Kelsey's asking, would you advise listing certifications from the past that may have expired?
Again, yes, it goes back to if you're proud of it, if it's something that showed determination, that is okay, especially at this point in your career. Now, once you get to Rollins, you start obtaining some new certifications, we may drop off some of those. But as an incoming student, anything that can show maturity, accomplishment, that can separate you from other candidates, we recommend putting on the resume.
All right, Marcel's asking, can you provide good examples of personal interests or hobbies? For example, I have a BFA in acting, so is listing professional experiences in theater relevant?
I would say there are not good or bad examples of personal hobbies because these are things that are individual that you're passionate about. Personally, I'm a ballroom dancer. I love ballroom dancing. So I'm passionate about that. It's possible I could list that on a resume, and it might be a topic of interest to an interviewer. So it's not good or bad. It's if I ask you in the interview, oh, tell me more, how'd you get into ballroom dancing, Roger? Well, I better have some detail to say about that. Or if I say, oh, it's something I did a couple of years ago, but I really don't have much time for it now. No, you do not want to list that.
All right, Sharia is asking, what should be included in your references? So like what information should be listed with on your reference sheet?
So you want to include their name, their title, the organization they work for, how you know that person, a good phone number, and a good email address for that person.
All right, Grace says, when emailing over a resume and cover letter, what should you enter in the subject line of an email?
Sometimes they're specific, and they'll tell you what you need to include in that subject line, in which case you need to do that if you want to make sure that you're going to be, if they're going to take you seriously as a candidate for that position. Otherwise, I would suggest if they don't offer up anything, using the title of the position that you're applying for, so that way they won't have any question about it, or even the reference number for that position.
Because it could be going to an HR representative who's getting hundreds of positions. Mm-hmm. So that can help her identify that.
All right, Michael has a couple of questions here. First up, should prior published works be listed on the resume, and in which section would it be most appropriate, or should it be under its own section? So where to put prior publications?
Publications definitely can be a section on the resume, but if you have an extensive listing, then the resume is not the format for that. A CV is where you list extensive publications. But what we state is if you have some publications that may show some relatedness to what you're applying for, yes, you definitely want to list that as a publication section, it usually will be towards the end of the resume, and it may be 2 publications that you list. But I do see students with 2- and 3-page resumes, and half of the page are publications. That is not the point of the resume. Remember, it's a marketing document. It is not an all-inclusive document of all of your publications that you've done. That would be the CV.
All right, Michael's next question, should there be the same amount of bullet points under each experience?
No, there is no required amount of bullet points. What you want to do is think through the skill sets, and if it takes 4 bullet points to describe the skill sets and accomplishments, then it's 4 bullet points. I do see students come in with 1 bullet point, and if I see, wow, that was position was a year long, and there's 1 bullet point, I do wonder, well, did they show up 2 hours a week? So, try to have at least 2 to 3 bullet points, but there is no prescribed number, and they do not have to be the same for each position.
All right, Lucas asks, should you account for gaps in a resume, like time in between jobs?
That's probably a question you'll be asked when you go in for the interview. So you should be prepared to answer that question if you do have any gaps in employment, but you wouldn't address that on your resume.
Most of you may have 1, 2, 3 month gaps between a summer position or something. It's not significant. Once you're out working full time, they're more aware of gaps. But again, be ready to address it in the interview, as LaDawna said.
All right, Kelsey's got another certification question. Should you list certifications that are in progress, such as Concorsia or IRB, things like that?
Yes, you can list certifications in progress. You can list the completion date expected. So just as you put expected graduation date, you can list an expected completion date for the certificate, because that shows the interviewer that, wow, this person is being proactive. I like that they're attaining the skill set. So yes, that is appropriate.
All right, Elizabeth's got a question here about significant post-bac coursework that was health sciences related but did not lead to an actual degree. Should that be included in the education section? If so, how might I structure that?
Yes, you can list that in the education section. Still, you're going to list the university that you attended. List the courses out, because probably you took 4 or 5, I might state. I'm not saying you have to list all of those, but you can list those courses out. However, if it has no relation to what you're pursuing, and depending on the length of the resume, that can be a very individual decision on that. But if it was significant and you did spend a year doing that, I do think that can show additional knowledge. So yes, that might be something that we work with you more individually on, to see the length of your resume and why you're including that.
All right, Leslie is asking, when applying to real positions at the CDC, do we need to use a federal resume?
The CDC definitely utilizes more of what's known as a CV, and I'll tell you the essential difference. A CV is more of an all-inclusive document, more of a documented history of what you've done. As I said, it might be all publications. And the CDC federal government, they are open to longer documents. So if you did have, for example, a 2.5 to 3 page resume document, for the real positions, it might be appropriate to submit that. Whereas if you were submitting to an outside organization like the Carter Center, they would not want to see that longer resume. So we are open to longer documents for federal positions.
All right, Sydney is asking, should my references be within the public health field?
We realize that at this point, a lot of you may not have done actual work in the public health field. Your references, when I call your references, they should be very strong references for you in terms of what you accomplished, your work ethic. Yes, this is a person you want to hire. Make sure that they know you, and whenever you apply to a position, and if you go to the interview and they ask you for references, you should email or call your reference and state, I just interviewed for this position at the CDC. Here's the position. Here's the things they were looking for. They may be contacting you. So when I used to call references, believe it or not, sometimes the reference would say, could you say that name again? It was as if they didn't know who it was, or maybe it had been 6 months since they had heard from the student. So stay in contact with your references and make sure that someone that can represent you well, because if I don't get a strong reference, then that will eliminate you as a candidate.
And to add to what Roger just said, also, some of you will notice when you're applying to internships or fellowships, they will be specific about the type of references. So just make sure if you're in that situation that you follow it. Like they'll ask for a professor or someone who's instructed you in a course, and then they might also ask for a personal reference. So you'll want to make sure that you give them exactly what they're asking for.
Definitely.
All right, Ferdois is asking, should I mention that I was a physician in my public health resume?
We do have a good number of physicians coming into Rollins, and usually that is a significant part of your educational and work background. So yes, it is fine to list that you were a physician because that is part of your work history and education.
All right, Chidumbabi, my apologies if I'm completely destroying your name, is asking, is an objective section a valid section of a resume?
So this is where we're getting into what I tell you, there's no one exact way to write a resume. An objective is commonly included, but the mistake that candidates make is they use the exact same objective for every application. So highly motivated professional looking for a position to increase my quantitative skills. That is a generic objective. I know that as the interviewer, it does not impress me. So if you're going to write an objective, it needs to be written specifically for that job description. And that way, as the interviewer, I can see, okay, at least they're trying to target this position. So if you have one, make it targeted.
Okay, Natalie says, I want to apply for a position where I can gain more skills in quantitative analysis with statistical software, but don't have any significant experience, the most being an introduction to software in some of my undergrad coursework. How do I compensate for this?
So this is what we'll cover tomorrow in your cover letter. And a lot of you're not going to have exposure to the direct skill set. We understand that. What you can do is in the cover letter, express your motivation. Tell me, why do you want to learn this? Are you just experimenting? Or is there a reason that you want to learn this because you see it as a skill set needed for what you want to do in the future? So we realize a lot of you are not going to have direct experience. Express that in the cover letter, which we'll cover tomorrow.
All right, Marcel is asking, if there are no instructions other than please upload resume, references, and cover letter, should I always include a formal 1 to 2 sentences in the body of the email? For example, I hope this message finds you well. Please see attached documents and feel free to contact me, etc.
To reiterate what Roger was saying in the presentation, you can use your cover letter in the body of that email, and then also just go ahead and attach the cover letter as a separate document along with the other required documents. But always make sure you write something in the body of the email and don't just leave it blank.
All right, that appears to be our last question. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. But like I mentioned earlier, we were recording this, so we'll have this posted on our YouTube channel, RSPH Admissions, in 3 to 5 business days. Same thing with the cover letter resume that's going to happen tomorrow. If you can't make it, you can always check it out then. And then, like we talked about, there's going to be plenty of times to meet with the Career Services staff during orientation. You can log on to the Admitted Student Portal and review the orientation program to see all the different events and things that will be going on that specifically deal with Office of Career Development. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to interact with these staff once you're here. So don't feel like this was your one and only shot, because that's certainly not the case. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And again, we're really happy that you could join us today, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for cover letters at noon.
Thanks.
Thanks.